We're going to go ahead and test these before we install them in the car for the final time. I'm just going to cut off the ends and strip just a little bit of wire. Now you can use a 9-volt battery for these, just a standard 9-volt battery like you'd use in a smoke detector or something like that. However, there may not be enough amperage in the battery to actually light the high beam or the high intensity portion of these light fixtures. So you're going to want to make sure that you're testing them just to make sure they work, not to test the operation of each part of the light, meaning low intensity versus high intensity. There is a wiring diagram that comes along with these, and I believe in this case the black is the ground. That may not be the case with all of these LED light fixtures, so double check them before you just start plugging them in. So we're just going to pull this off of the base, separate it from the gasket, and then touch the black to the ground and the white to the hot, and nothing. So that may mean that we are white, and that's it. So in this case, white is the ground. Black looks like it's the low intensity, and you can see it's bright on the front of my shirt, and the red is the high intensity. So we know that light works. We're going to do the same thing with the other one. Just strip a 1/2 inch or so off the ends of the wires. This time we will make sure we use the white for the ground. So white to ground, and we have light. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let's see if I can turn it around. So there we go. There's the low intensity. We will go the red to the hot, and you can see that is high intensity. So both lights work. So now we're going to go about getting a WeatherPac connector attached to both of these. This WeatherPac, I'm going to double check this before I go ahead and connect it to the ends of these wires to make sure it fits through one of the holes in the back of the car, because there's nothing worse than putting these on and finding it doesn't fit through that hole and then having to either make the hole bigger or cut these off. So we'll double check that before we solder these on, and once I get them all soldered on, I'll bring you guys back. Okay, I thought I'd check back in with you guys. Although I do have the tool for these terminals at the end, and they're already crimped on. My personal feeling is that it doesn't hurt to give these a dab of solder. So I've got the soldering iron and some solder, and we're going to go ahead and just heat up the end of this wire just a little bit. Dab of solder on the soldering iron. You get that one. That one and one more. That's it. We're good. I'll give this one just a little bit more. There we go. One thing to remember, before you put the terminals on the end, is to make sure you put your seals. In this case, we're using red ones. They just happen to be the smallest ones in my kit. Make sure you put those seals on. You can, if you forget, you can slide them over the terminals at the end. Make sure that if you do solder these, that the terminals have cooled off before you do that, because these insulators will melt with heat. So just make sure that you've let it cool off. But that's what we do to solder them in. And then we're going to put these in an orientation and then probably mark it in the build book just so that we can replicate the same in the front, for instance, for the high beam and low beam. We're going to do these in a way that, especially in the front, where we've got turn signals and headlights, that there's no way anybody could ever mix up the orientation of the lights, meaning we'll probably put a 3-terminal plug on the headlights for high beam, low beam, and ground. What we'll probably do on the front marker lights is we will go ahead and use a 2-pin for probably the ground and the parking, and then for the turn signal we'll use a single. So it'll still make 3, but this way you're not going to ever mix them up and plug one into the wrong deal. What I always do on the terminals, especially when I'm using the 3 terminal plugs, is I always make the ground the center. It makes it a little harder when you're doing a 2-terminal. But I would still, in this orientation, probably what I would do, since I'm doing the ground in the center on this one, I'll make the outbound left, in this case, outbound right on the camera. I would make it the ground, so that if for some reason some moron decided to plug it in the wrong way, plug a 2 into a 1, hopefully they wouldn't blow anything up. But we try to make it as foolproof as we can when we do these, so that there's never a mix-up down the line. So these are done. We're going to go ahead, still warm, not too bad, and stab these in. I always like to do it with the hook facing up, the latch. So we know that the white is the ground, so it's going to go in the center. And of course it's not going to want to go in. Oh, we got a little solder on that one. So luckily the soldering iron is still out. We'll melt that solder off of there. Let's see if it'll go in now. Still a little not cooperating. We'll do the red one and the other one, and then the black one and this one. And then we'll run the seals down, snap it shut, and it'll be ready to go. We'll do the same thing on the other one that we soldered earlier. And then when we do all the rest of the wiring in the car, we'll just make sure that we have the same orientation, high and low, and we'll be good. Okay, so there you are. These are all terminated on the ends. The seals are in them. You can see the seals just sticking out of the end there. And all the hardware, the nuts, the washers, or everything are put back on the ends here. We're going to put these away for safekeeping for the time being. And then once we get to this point of the build where we're ready to put the taillights in, you guys will see it all come together. Until then, see you next time. Little bonus footage. I went ahead and took the headlight buckets and stripped them of all the wire nuts and split loom and tape, and I went ahead and put WeatherPac connectors on both of those. So the headlight buckets are all done, and then the front turn signal parking lot assemblies, I went ahead and got those set up with the WeatherPacs as well. So those are all set to go back on the car when we rewire it. So I was on a roll with the WeatherPac connectors. I had the soldering iron out already, so it just seemed a good time to do. These are going to need some cleaning up. They've got a whole lot of oxidation built up on them, so we'll clean these up. The headlight buckets and headlight trim rings will be cleaned up as well before they go back on the car. We've got the new taillights for the back. So it's all going to be coming together here real quick.